What's up, everyone? Hope you're doing well today. This is Raphael Garcia here for episode number 35 of the Let's Talk Wrestling podcast. Today is Saturday, October 19th. Thank you for everyone who's taken the time to listen to this show once it goes up across our YouTube channels, our podcast channels, whether it be YouTube, Spotify, Anchor, SoundCloud, or wherever else you find our content. As usual, I'm going to ask you to take the time to subscribe to our channel, like our work, share it across your social media platforms. We always appreciate all the support on our growing network here at MMA Ratings. As usual, Schwan and I are here on Thursdays doing the MMA Ratings podcast. We didn't get to one this past week because I was out on some personal stuff. But we will be back next week to talk about all the action from Friday's fight and all the other MMA news going on across the industry, especially today as Conor McGregor was officially named as a person of interest in a second sexual assault allegation, second in less than a year. So that'll definitely be something we'll be talking about next week. But this show, the Let's Talk Wrestling podcast, is all about professional wrestling, and there is quite a bit to talk about in the industry every week now because we have multiple promotions making big changes. AEW's around, WWE's obviously doing their thing. You have big developments going on out in Japan. We're going to talk about that briefly towards the end, just because I'm not the most knowledgeable in that area, but I still think it's worth talking about briefly. So, as I mentioned last week, I do plan on doing some changes to this show just because there's so much wrestling content that's going on week in and week out that I think is good to catch, but finding the time to catch everything is usually a little bit difficult. I see that I've been spending part of my Fridays and Saturdays picking up on content. That's why this show has been coming out either Friday or Saturday. So I'm just kind of going to schedule that out a little bit more and figure out when's the best time to do shows. Maybe do 2 a week. Really trying to figure that piece out. So I'm going to start first with WWE action. And before I get into kind of talking about what happened this past week, I do want to say WWE and their work, at one point in time in my life, it was appointment viewing. I had to be in front of the television on Monday, had to be there as close as I could on Tuesday, regardless of my training schedule, because I wanted to catch what was going on in the promotion. That's not the case so much anymore. Even with SmackDown moving to Fridays is a very social day. Even though a lot of those days I tend to go to the gym and come home and not do much, it's still a day that's usually could easily be taken over because of something social going on outside the house. Mondays I coach, and Raw is on Monday nights. But even on times when I'm home, I usually sit down and watch Raw. But the shows the past few weeks have not been good. We're going to talk about the content from Raw and SmackDown this week, and what I mean by good is that there hasn't been anything on them that makes me want to stop and watch. There's good portions to them, and we'll talk about some of those this week. There's bad portions to them, but it's not appointment viewing to me as much anymore. I can catch it during the week thanks to platforms like Hulu, or you can go on YouTube and catch a lot of the highlights. But yeah, it's kind of a changing trend. I think maybe it's kind of like just the ebbs and flows of how my viewership of professional wrestling changes. But the shows on Monday and Friday just are not appointment viewing. Wednesday is some damn appointment viewing. Not only do you have AEW on Wednesdays, of course, you have NXT, and we'll mention it briefly here and talk about it a little bit later on in the show. But AEW continues to win the ratings war. Both shows had a little bit of a drop off this week. I think it was 1.01 for million for AEW compared to 712,000 for NXT, and it was double. The gap was double in the 18 to 49 demographic. I think 0.44 for AEW and 0.20 for NXT. So there's an age gap there that we can probably talk about at some show in the future. I don't want to do that right now. But Wednesday night is definitely appointment viewing from a professional wrestling standpoint because AEW, of course, is doing their thing over on TNT. We're going to talk about this week's show as well. But NXT as well. NXT has been fantastic to me these last 3 days. People are saying, critics, and I use that in air quote, are claiming that the Full Sail venue is making it look like it's less of a big time shows, and that's what's impacting the ratings. I don't know if that's necessarily the case. I think the fact that it's easier and more accessible to watch on demand, I think that's playing a bigger part in it than people are willing to see. I would like to know what their Thursday night views are like, because the show becomes available on Thursdays on Hulu and the WWE Network. So I would like to know what their Thursday night or what their on-demand views are like. 'Cause I think that would be an interesting number to add on to the viewership that we see on Wednesdays, but no one's really talking about that. However, the consistent narrative or the consistent feedback is that the wrestling on NXT is better week in and week out, and I do believe that. I believe that the bell to bell, in between the ropes wrestling is better on NXT than it is on AEW, but AEW is doing a better job of giving you the entertainment factor. We'll definitely agree with that wholeheartedly. I mean, if you look at the crowds at AEW, they're definitely being more entertained and they're more excited. They're more a part of the show. As I mentioned, I went to the first show here in October, and at some point in time, I'm going to stop mentioning that. But the first show was great. The crowd was overhyped for everything that went on. It was a good time, and it's continued to be a good time as they've traveled. So I will definitely go when they come back to the DC area. It's just an enjoyable show, and I appreciate what they're doing. But we're going to talk about AEW later on. We're going to talk about AEW Dark as well. So for NXT, let's go ahead and jump into that. We had Tommaso Ciampa making his return against Angel Garza. This was a great match. Fast paced, back and forth action. It was funny. The way they got over to the finish. They got over and got to the finish was Ciampa using the pants of Garza. The Garza family is from Mexico. Him and Humberto Carrillo, they're cousins, based within that the Garza family. And Ciampa takes the tights of Garza that he takes off every match that resemble the Mexican flag, and he basically began to desecrate them, stomping on them, kicking them. He acted like he was going to wipe his butt with them. That's what it looked like for a second. And Angel Garza tried to jump in through the ropes, and he gets caught with the draping DDT, which is called the Willow's Bell now. And that ended up getting the pin. Undisputed Era came out. Nothing happened, but I would love to see Ciampa go through the Undisputed Era one by one, where he has to have a match with each and every one of them before getting to Adam Cole. They could tell that story, for a couple weeks, but I would love to see that, just because I think that action would be fantastic. We could also maybe be a way to get back to him and Gargano. I don't think that that's something that should be done just from a timing standpoint. We saw so much of those two guys together, but I would love to watch Tommaso go one-on-one with every member of the Undisputed Era. I think it would be some great matches there. Then we got Oney Lorcan versus the Imperium, and this was a good match. Hard-hitting, ridiculous spots. That double moonsault that Fabian Arkner, whatever his name is, did off the top was fantastic. Their finisher, the European uppercut from the Doomsday Device into the Powerbomb, is also excellent. I enjoyed that. That got me up for a second. But I'm not too sure how I feel about these guys' characters. 4 white men is these three guys, and Walter playing like it. I know, it's too easy to call them Nazis or whatever, et cetera, et cetera. Like, that's not what it is. I had a good friend of mine who was traveling in Germany a couple years back, maybe 2 years ago, and he was approached by some men who basically deemed themselves Nazis and were threatening his life. My friend is black, he's good friend of mine, and when I hear that story and when I look at the Imperium, that's what it makes me think of. I look at these guys and I see the men who are at soccer matches screaming and cheering and making monkey sounds and basically denigrating all the black players on the field. So it's a little difficult for me to watch. I get the characters though. These guys are great. Walter is fantastic in the ring as well. And they're a heel stable. I'm just a little cringe on the characters there. Then we got Io. We got a Gargano segment. Not really going to talk about that. We got Io versus Caden Carter, formerly known as Lacey Lane. I like Caden. She has a very unique look. Those dreadlocks that are hers, thank God. She stands out with her tattoos, with her gray eyes. I think that those are contacts that she wears. but she has a very unique look, and it's something we're going to talk about later on in SmackDown. Uniqueness is important in the women's division, in my opinion. But this is Io has a very good, unique look as well too. This was a great match. I thought it was going to be more of a squash, but Kaden got her offense in. That springboard dropkick that she hit to Io's face looked good. Some of her other transitions were good. She's been wrestling a little bit longer than I thought, I believe, but she still looked a little bit off here. But nothing too bad. Nothing worse than any of the other women on the roster are doing. I'll say that for sure. Elaine gets the win, and that delayed German suplex was nasty. Then her moonsault is the best moonsault in the game. There was a month ago maybe, WWE did a tweet about who has the best moonsault in the WWE right now. They had the nerve to have Charlotte on that list, and they had Charlotte and a couple other people on that list, but they didn't mention Io Shirai. Io has the best moonsault in the WWE hands down right now. Rhea Ripley came out. They had a face-off, and Rhea basically told Io to keep her name out of her mouth, which, this is kind of like her character right now. I love how Io starts yelling and screaming in Japanese. You can tell she's fired up, but you obviously don't know what she's saying. She leaves the ring. Then we got Keith Lee versus Donovan. Can't say that last name. The story of this was them working over the arm. The winner of this match was getting a title shot against Roderick Strong for the NXT North American title. They tore it up. That Poison Rana spot, I thought Keith Lee was dead. This man is 6'2", 320 pounds, doing a Poison Rana to Donovan, who's also 6 foot something, like 290. That should not be physically possible. But he did that. They had some other big spots as well. Big men getting it in, and the people love this pairing. They've had 3 matches. This is their 4th match against each other. They're 1-1-1 heading into this one. This is a type of singles match. People talk about 50-50 booking, but this is when it's done right. And Keith Lee and Donovan had a great back and forth match, and I'm glad what I saw there. Strong comes out and gets involved. Regal from high above, looking like someone's angry grandfather at a opera show. He looks like those 2 Muppets that sit up in the high seats at the opera and yell obscenities at everybody. That's what he looked like. But William Regal basically said that since Strong interfered, next week it's a triple threat match for the NXT North American title. Should be a good one. We have Matt Riddle versus Bronson Reed, another quick, hard-hitting match. It got both men over. Riddle got the win after, I don't know the name of that move, something with Bro in it, of course, but he got the finish there and gets the win. Bronson Reed looks good. Good, fast match, quick pace. Nothing to really kind of complain about there. Tegan Nox and Tayanara Conti, they dropped the Conti part of her name. Conti really didn't get a lot of offense in there. This is more about Tegan Nox and her return from her leg injury. Man, she has 2 big braces on her knees. That stood out to me. It's like good, like those braces were huge. It reminded me of Steve Austin towards the end of his WWE run, before he kind of stepped away. With 2 very big braces on her leg. It'll be interesting to see how healthy she can remain and if those leg injuries flare back up. Shayna Baszler and the crew came out. I can't stand how goofy Jessamine Duke and Marina Shafir look. They look like clowns to me. They look like jobbers, like Jobber to the Stars. Like they're one step above Patterson and Briscoe from back in the day. But they came out. There was some back and forth. Shayna looks good as the heel champion that everyone's chasing after, and I like how they have everyone chasing after her in their own different ways. Like next week we have Rhea versus Bianca Belair. You have Candice LeRae still there. You have Dakota Kai and Tegan Nox both jockeying for title shots. I like how they're doing that. There's a lot of different things that they can really do with all those different storylines going on for women. And it's funny because this is the same thing that people complain about. This is what people complain about when it comes to the quote-unquote main roster, where you have the storylines going on around the women's title, but you have nothing else for the rest of the women on the roster. And here it is in NXT, 2-hour show. they have the best women's roster in the WWE, in my opinion, and probably in women's wrestling. And yet they can find storylines, they can find angles for everyone involved. So I think that was fantastic there. He also got Boa versus Killian Dane, another squash match. I love Dane as like the massive monster heel, just running through everybody, using a lot of Big Van Vader's moves, and I just love it. Dane is. I am so surprised they couldn't find something for him on the main roster. Like, there's no way that wouldn't have worked. They could have easily had him running through people, kind of like what they wanted to do with Lars, but you saw how that fit. Dane is the truth. I'm a fan of his, and I want to see more of his work. When he was walking out and Pete Dunne was coming down for his match against Damian Priest, and they had the finger snapping moment, I want someone to find that image of when Killian Dane turned around and looked at Pete Dunne. That is a fucking shot right there. Like, that picture was excellent, and I want that picture because I want to use it in some way, shape, or form in the coming weeks. Killian Dane looked like he wanted to kill Pete Dunne, and that's exactly what I like to see out of my heels. We also got Pete Dunne and Damian Priest. Good match between the two. Damian Priest gets the win with a sick nut shot as the ref tried to break him up in the corner. Good back and forth action. I like the fact that he had to take the low road to get the victory. Fits within his character. I love the arrogant type of character that he is. They call him a rock star or whatever they want to say, but he pulls it off well, and I like what I'm seeing from him. I wasn't too familiar with Punishment Martinez before he joined the WWE, but I think that, you know, this is a character that's going to resonate well with some people, at least at the NXT level within Full Sail. I wanted to cover some of the stuff about Raw and SmackDown that I saw from this week. Just kind of some quick hitters. Becky versus Charlotte, another great match between these two women. This was on Raw. Andrade versus Ali was a fantastic match as well. The finishing sequence there was good. I love Selena Vega. One day someone's going to duck out of the way of her Hurricane Rana off the apron spot, and it's going to be hilarious. The War Raiders, they got the tag team titles. The crowd is behind them. They're over. It took a little while. It had some hiccups with the name and just getting them off to a fast start, but they look good. The crowd's behind them, and I like what I saw there. Aleister Black versus Eric Young. We got an Eric Young sighting, but as I've said in the past, I'm not a big fan of Aleister Black, so he gets the win there. The OC, they jumped the Street Profits, and I think Black Wrestling Alliance on Twitter was joking about it, but they've only continuously jumped black people. They jumped the Street Profits, they jumped Ricochet, they jumped then they jumped R-Truth at one time. So yeah, there's questions about that, but it's neither here nor there. No one really cares. I'll point that out, but it's still just, maybe it's just a running gag. But either way, the OC jumped Street Profits. But we'll see what happens with that. We thought they were going to get a match that night, but they didn't, and nothing's been announced for Raw this week. So, it is what it is. It's another dead angle for right now. Ricochet versus Shelton Benjamin. This was a good match. No, the OC jumped Cedric Alexander. That's what it was. Sorry. Not R-Truth. But Ricochet and Shelton Benjamin was a great match. Imagine if Shelton Benjamin was still in his prime. And he's still great. He can still go. But imagine if he was in his prime like 10 years ago. And that was a version that we got with Ricochet in the ring on a more frequent basis. I would love to see those two guys do something together. Shelton Benjamin, he was a dude I wanted to see champion years ago. The same run that Kofi Kingston had, I always wanted to see Shelton be that man. He's had multiple individual title reigns, such as like the Intercontinental and U.S. Championship, but he never got that one big title run. Never will, but Shelton Benjamin was always my dude. Buddy Murphy, Cedric Alexander, when are they not going to tear it up? Like, you would have to tie one of them to the ropes and tell them not to have a great match in order for them to not have a great match together. But once again, they tore it up. I don't think there's any way for these guys to ever have a match together and not put on something fantastic. So yeah, they did their thing. Buddy Murphy got the win this time. I think Cedric got the win last week. So I believe they're on separate shows. I don't want to comb through my notes, but let's see what happens with this. If they are on the same show, I wonder if they can do some similar booking like they're doing with Lee and Donovan down in NXT and kind of keep these two together, but keep the storyline intriguing and having them trading wins and losses. SmackDown, again, I asked, is this appointment viewing anymore? Ratings went down again this week. They were at 2.4 million. I think it was like a 15% drop over the week before that, which was like 2.8, which was compared to a 3.8 for the first week, something along those numbers. I was thinking about putting together like a rating sheet for professional wrestling, but that's not my forte. I am good with stats. That's my 9-to-5 job, but I don't want to sit down and become that guy trying to pull those numbers apart. But that's neither here nor there. Roman versus Shinsuke Nakamura for the Intercontinental Championship. Good match. I love how Shin countered the Superman punch into a flying armbar. Since I have that jiu-jitsu background and that base, I love that there. He transitioned that into a triangle, which is exactly what you're supposed to do if someone tries to sit up on you when you're armbarring them. So great match, great segment there. Good knees by Shin. The big boot that Roman hit Shinsuke Nakamura was just nasty. So it was a good match. Baron Corbin interfered. Crowd shits on it, of course. Daniel Bryan makes a save. Then we got a tag team match. So that set up the tag team match main event with Roman and Daniel Bryan against Baron Corbin and Shinsuke Nakamura. We'll talk about that in a second. Maybe my favorite segment of the night was with the New Day and Heavy Machinery, not because of them being comical and doing their thing, but there was a moment where Tucker was asking Kofi Kingston about losing the heavyweight, the WWE Championship, and you see Kofi saying, no, I'm good. And he's like talking about staying positive, but while he's doing that, you see him crumpling up the pancakes. Now, I'm not writing that off, because I've actually just wrote a piece about Kofi Kingston and the way that they've been using him since losing the title 2 weeks ago, and they've just completely ignored the fact that that's a big moment. But this can lead into something major if they are going to tell the story that Kofi Kingston is losing faith in the power of positivity, and he loses it. And I don't want to see him turn on the New Day, but I would be a fan of seeing him snap and just beat the shit out of people left and right. Kind of similar towards the way when he snapped against Randy Orton a decade ago, and that led to the boom drop or whatever that leg drop was called through the table and all those other big moments. I think they would have to do it differently now, but there's a story to be told here that he loses interest in the power of positivity and just goes on a tear. The question is whether or not WWE will tell that story and if they will make it anything meaningful. I don't have faith in them, but seeing this made me stop and say, you know what, this is pretty interesting. And that was my moment of the night on Friday. Then we got Curtis Axel versus Gable, and I want to talk about his name in a second. Squash match for Gable. The dude is just great. And then he cuts a promo afterwards where he's been called Shorty Gable. And he talks about that, recognizing that him being short is who he is, embracing himself. So, that's neither here nor there. But he calls himself Shorty G, and that's his name now. So for a second there, I was like, I'm not quite sure how I feel about this. I laughed about it. People on Twitter were giving out their hot takes left and right. Not quite sure how I feel about this. I think it's funny. Let's see what happens. It's funny. Somebody brought up the idea. It was like people are mad about him being called Shorty G because he's on SmackDown. But if he was in AEW or if he was on the Indies being called Shorty G, no one would have a problem with it. And I definitely, truly do believe that. I do believe that. And let's just see what happens, because the dude can go in the ring. He's already proven that point. Then we had an 8-man tag with Heavy Machinery and New Day versus The Revival and Dolph and Ziggler. Good match, some comedic segments there, but they gave us some action. It was exciting. The hot tags were great. The finish from the suplex that Otis was holding, I think Scott Dawson. He was holding Dawson in this vertical suplex, passed him off to Big E, who then hit the midnight ending, whatever that move is that him and Xavier would do off the top. Great moment. Otis is super over. This match, I enjoyed it much more. Heavy Machinery is growing on me. I'm not the biggest fan of those two guys, but they continue to improve, and it was a good moment. What else? did we have? I wanted to talk about 8-man tag, the Miz TV segment. Started out great with Sasha and Bayley. Bayley cut probably her best promo talking over the Miz about why she turned heel. The segment where they showed the clip of the little boy crying when she went heel last week, perfect. I knew that they were going to use it. Perfect insertion there. Bayley is who she is. She used that line, life sucks, then you die. It is what it is. But, I mean, the crowd went from chanting what and kind of like not paying her to any attention to outright boos, which is what you want to happen during a heel promo. So good segment with her. Sasha looked fantastic. Bayley looked fantastic. So I like what I'm seeing between these two women. Then it went downhill. Nikki Cross came out with the mic, said some things. Dana Brooke came out with the mic, said some things. Flex Appeal, whatever that was. Lacey Evans came out. Then they got the women's six-pack match started for the winner to get a shot at Bayley. There was not one person of color in this match. It was Mandy Rose, Sonya Deville, Carmella, Nikki, who got the win, Dana Brooke, and Lacey Evans. Okay, that shows you the extent. I know Naomi's hurt. Sasha. Alicia Fox is gone. I mean, she's been reportedly, I'm hearing that she was released. I haven't seen anything official from the WWE, but she's been moved over to the alumni section on their website. We know she was having issues with alcoholism and other problems. Like, she's the reason why Arn Anderson got released, because he did that match while drunk. So, yeah, I'm wondering what's going on with that. I think that there needs to be some closure around that. But there was not one woman of color in this match. Nikki Cross, she gets the win. She's the next up for Bayley. I don't see them taking the belt off of Bayley and putting it on Cross. I think that this is going to be a long-term story that leads to Bayley and Sasha in some way, shape, or form. Then we got Braun versus Drew Gulak. This was good. This was good. Drew Gulak's PowerPoints are back, which everyone is a fan of. Braun squashes him, but I'm here for Gulak going back to that smart heel. I just don't want to see him getting crushed week in and week out. I think he has more value beyond that. He should be in a mid-card feud around the Intercontinental title, but I'm a fan of his. I wasn't at first, but the PowerPoint version of Drew Gulak got me hooked on him, and I'm looking forward to seeing what's next with him. We had the main event. Obviously, Roman and Bryan got the win. Not much to talk about there. Moving on to talk about AEW. AEW Dark. This is, if you're unaware, they take their dark matches. They have one usually before the show, 2, 3 after. They take them and they put them on a show, or they put them on YouTube on Tuesdays. This past one was fantastic. Well, no, let me scratch that. This past one had a fantastic match in Kenny Omega versus Joey Janela. That's must see. They also had Sonny Kiss on this one in a triple threat match. I want to see what that match looked like for him. But they've done 2 so far, and each one has at least 810,000 views on it. So that's important, because this is another opportunity for them to continue building their base and show how much people are opining to see AEW action. At Dynamite, Scorpio Sky looks fantastic in that tag team match. Christopher Daniels, I think he's really hurt. I think it was a Twitter or Instagram, maybe I saw something posted about him being actually injured. So that's unfortunate. I do hope that we get Scorpio Sky run in a singles champion or a singles run, because the dude he's showing that he's something special. And as I've said plenty of times, I'm interested in seeing wrestlers of color in prominent positions. He could be that guy for AEW, and I think that that's something special, something worth watching. If Cody stands by some of the words he said on the diversity and inclusion so many times, let's see, this is an opportunity here. Marco Stunt, a lot of people are flipping out about the idea that Marco Stunt stood in for Luchasaurus and had a match with the Lucha Brothers with Jungle Boy in his corner. Or Jungle Boy as his tag team partner. I'm not fired up about this as much as other people are getting. I think it was, it is what it is. I saw someone try to compare him to Rey Mysterio. Well, let's not go that far because Rey Mysterio is one of the greatest of all time. So let's not even begin that conversation. He did his job out there. He looked like a kid getting kicked around, getting punted and stuff like that. So it is what it is. But you know, not too much to talk about from me at that point yet. Pac versus Moxley and Pac and Moxley versus Omega and Page. This is a great match. Like I've said so many times before, I'm a fan of everything that Pac does, anything and everything that Pac does. I'm a mark for him right now. He basically goes off on Moxley because Moxley's about to get himself DQ'd, which would have cost him the match. Moxley says, "Screw you!" Kicks him, hits him with his DDT, walks out. Moxley gets double teamed and gets pinned. That's his first loss in AEW. Sets up a match between Pac and Moxley for next week. I think Pac is going to lose that one too, but because they got to keep Moxley strong for his match with Omega at Full Gear. I don't even think Pac has a match on that card yet. But it is what it is. I am looking forward to seeing Pac and Moxley next week. Going to make sure I watch and talk about that. Riho versus Britt Baker. Riho got the win here. And a lot of people are questioning whether or not Riho should be the champion and why Britt Baker isn't a star. I'm not a fan of Britt Baker. AEW's women's roster all looks the same to me. Outside of Awesome Kong and Aja Kong, Bria Priestley, I think Bria Priestley, whatever her name is, the woman with the dark hair, she looks different. Riho looks different. The other Joshi woman looks different. But the roster seems, the women that they seem to want to push to the forefront all look the same to me. They all look like WWE divas or WWE women's division wrestlers. And Britt Baker, I get it. She's a dentist. She has that move called the dental dam, which I think is hilarious. I'm just not a fan. I like Riho. I think she's different. She's different than the type of women's wrestling I've seen for so long. So let's see what they continue to do with her. But I don't think she is going to keep that title for a long time. I do think they're going to put it on someone that fits the more traditional mode. And if you can't see me, obviously you can't because this is an audio recording. I am doing the air quotes around traditional. Chris Jericho and Darby Allin, Philadelphia street fight. Jericho gets the win. Darby looks good in this match, even taking the L. Jericho put him over on Instagram later. Jericho is fucking Jericho, man. Someone said that I was listening to a podcast this week and someone called Jericho the NWO Hogan version of Chris Jericho, and I am totally here for it. The dude is superstar status. He's the biggest name that they have in the organization. I'm not a fan of the Inner Circle because I don't like Jake Hager. We'll never like Jake Hager. I think he's a joke. But, it is what it is. And don't tell me that he's some accomplished MMA fighter. The dude's fought 2 of my Uber drivers so far. So screw that. I could beat him. I will guarantee you I will submit Jake Hager in a grappling match. But that's neither here nor there. Just not a fan of the Inner Circle, but whatever. Other stuff that happened this week. I want to talk about NWA Power. This is a very fun show. It comes on Tuesdays on YouTube. They've done 2 episodes so far. Let me see something real quick. So you have, because they've done 2 episodes so far. Let me see. Their first episode has about 470,000 views. Their second one from this past week has 235. This is a good show, and this is more about professional wrestling from the 80s and 90s. It's more of a studio show feel. The matches lead right into interviews. Their characters feel a little bit hokey, but that's all professional wrestling. Show me a professional wrestling organization that doesn't have hokey type of characters. And what's been fun about this is that there's been some recognizable names: Colt Cabana, Mr. Anderson, who's basically Ken Anderson, Kelly Klein, James Storm, Eli Drake, Kingston, and Trevor Murdoch were all on episode 2. I don't really remember who's on episode 1. Nick Aldis is there, obviously. They have some other people there as well. So it's a good platform for me. I plan on watching it going forward. I'm going to watch this week. I think Marty Bell, her match is on episode 3 coming up. And there's one name that jumped out to me, and that was Ricky Starks. If you did not see his promo from Tuesday, go back and watch it because it's good. It's really good. And I saw some people on Twitter talking about that they've been fans of his for a while. I'm looking forward to seeing what's next from him because I think that was a good introduction to him. He got the win over Trevor Murdoch, and that promo was actually very good. You can tell it's taped. You can tell they've done multiple, takes of that, et cetera. But, it's good TV. It's good hour-long pro wrestling, about 56 minutes. You can watch that and go about your way. I don't want to talk about, Bushiroad purchased Stardom, and Bushiroad is an organization that owns New Japan Wrestling. A lot of people are speculating that this is a move to kind of begin bringing women's wrestling into New Japan because New Japan wants to further their success out in the West, basically here in North America. But women's wrestling is much more prominent here than it is in the East, and people will not watch the promotion if it doesn't have women on the card, which is understandable. We're at a place now where we're looking at having equal footing for the women that step into the ring. Let's see what happens. There's if you want more about this, you go listen to, I think, the Warren Hayes show from this week. Smart to death because he talked about this a lot. And, he's much more of an expert in this space than I am. But it was a good conversation about that. I am all about New Japan Pro Wrestling, trying to get to that more. Definitely looking forward to Wrestle Kingdom this year, Kota Ibushi and all the crew. One thing Warren did say that kind of I didn't enjoy so much was that he pitched an idea of how Kazuki Okada is talking about defending the title both nights because Wrestle Kingdom this year is a 2-night event. And the idea of him beating Kota Ibushi to have a match with either Jay White or Kenny Omega on day 2 and losing the title to one of them, don't like it at all. I'd rather him lose the title to Kota Ibushi. Stop trying to put that belt on white men, for lack of a better term. I mean, let that belt be what it is and let someone from that area hold the belt and hold it the same way Okada has. That belt means much more, I think, to the industry than a lot of people are even really recognizing it. And I just think that it needs to flourish there instead of being put on an AEW performer in Kenny Omega or Jay White. Jay White's going to be a great heel. He is a great heel now. He's like that Triple H-esque type heel where you hate him for everything that he does, but when we look back at him, we're going to respect him as one of the best heels during this time. I think that's really how his career is going to run, as him as a heel. And he's going to have a babyface run as well, too. But I don't think that title should go on him. I think it needs to stay on someone from Japan, and I hope that Kota Ibushi wins it and takes it off Okada. Now, with that being said, I am a Kota Ibushi fan the same way I am of Pac. So, take my word for a grain of salt. I wanted to talk about the ratings briefly. Didn't want to dive into that too much, as I mentioned earlier. AEW got the victory there. I don't want to harp on ratings because I am not an expert in that space. You see everyone talking about it, watching on Thursdays to see the numbers come out, just to kind of give out their hot takes as quickly as they possibly can. I don't want to do that here. I want this show to be a little bit more different. We're going to talk about different topics within professional wrestling, especially from a diversity and inclusion standpoint. So there's that. But yes, AEW did get the win again on the Wednesday night rating wars. I think they're going to continue getting those victories. But NXT is going to stay. I'm willing to bet that they're going to stay with the above 700, just because they're doing more to put on good shows. We're not building towards a takeover right now. I do think they're going to begin building towards more takeovers. They're going to begin traveling next year. So I do think that they're going to stay around the 700 range. I don't think that people are in as much of a DEFCON 5 scenario because the ratings are what they are. But we'll see. I could be wrong. I've been wrong about other things in the past. But what I'm not wrong about is that this show is coming to a close. It is Saturday, October 19th. As I said, this is episode 35 of the Let's Talk Wrestling podcast. My name is Raphael Garcia. You can follow me at rgarcia_sports. You can catch MMA Ratings on Instagram and Twitter at MMA Ratings Net, where you can catch all of our commentary about MMA. Adam Martin is one of our big writers there. Schwan Humes is a great analyst that helps me on our Thursday shows. Michael Ford is our leader in charge, keeping us all reined in. You can catch us all on Twitter where we do our talking there. Then you can check out our podcast every Thursday. Hit us up on YouTube on MMA Ratings Net on YouTube, where you can watch this show and our other podcasts as well. So thank you all for joining us. Stay tuned for some changes to this show and how often and how frequently I do it. But once again, have a great weekend. Everybody be safe and catch wrestling next week. Enjoy it. Don't bitch about it on Twitter. Just take it what it is and enjoy this great time in professional wrestling. Have a great night, everyone.